good to see everybody. Glenn, it's not fair to lead a song we don't know. We did what we could. Again, it's good to have everybody here this morning. I know we have a lot out with sickness and song leader out with his voice and everything, but it's good to have everybody here, and especially our visitors, and hope you come back with us soon. We are continuing our study in the book of Ecclesiastes. We are in chapter 6 this morning. When we finish today, we will be halfway through the book of Ecclesiastes. And I hope you're not getting bored with it. I know it's kind of the same thing, just said in a different way, but Solomon is bringing out a lot of good information. And I think it is very applicable to us today. So anyway, today is good. I mean, we're getting halfway through, but there's only 12 verses in this morning's lesson, so we should hopefully get out early and beat everybody else to the restaurants. So, but Solomon is not written like a normal book. It's kind of written like a diary, if you will, in that it's his thoughts of the day that he's writing down. It's not a book or a novel, that carries a theme all the way through that's easy to follow. He's kind of bouncing around. He's thought of this today, and he writes it down, and he thinks of this, and he writes it down. And he's given us his life story, but not in book form. And today he kind of changes courses again with how he is writing. And he's talking more about, what's going on in his life. And he is recording his personal thoughts about his life's journey and his pursuit of happiness so far without God. And that's the key point that he's making here, is everything that he has given us, all of his life examples, are without God. It's how he's trying to fulfill his pleasures, his sensual pleasures on earth, what he refers to as below the sun. And it's all in vain. It's all vanity. It's like grasping at the wind. He finds happiness, he finds pleasure, but it's only for a short period. And the point he's going to get across is, it's not until we go vertical with God that we find lasting peace, that we find lasting happiness, that we find what our soul is actually looking for. So let's get on into chapter 6 of Ecclesiastes, the first 3 verses. There is an evil which I have seen under the sun, again referring to the earth, and it is common among men. A man to whom God has given riches and wealth and honor, so that he lacks nothing for himself of all he desires. Yet God does not give him the power to eat of it, and a foreigner consumes it. This is vanity, and it is evil affliction. Solomon, again, is describing himself here in the first 2 verses. He is wealthy beyond belief. His wealth has brought him honor. But Solomon lacks for nothing. Anything he wants, he has. He has acquired anything his heart has desired. He has enjoyed all of his wealth and his family and his estate that he has built up with his wealth. But he can't find lasting peace, nor lasting pleasure. It all vanishes away like a vapor. This foreigner, whoever or whatever this is, has consumed everything. Some think that Solomon here is referring to the foreigner might be depression that he is feeling. It's sucking the life out of Solomon to the point that he can't enjoy his riches and belongings. Why? Because it is all vanity. It is an evil affliction. Money and things cannot buy you happiness. Instead, Solomon tells us that it is all an evil affliction. And what is an affliction? A disease. It is a sickness. It is not happiness. Verses 3 and 4. If a man begets 100 children and lives many years, so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with goodness, or indeed he has no burial. I say that a stillborn child is better than he, for it comes in vanity and departs in darkness, and its name is covered with darkness. Solomon goes on to say that a man can have 100 children and live many years, but his soul is not satisfied with what? With goodness. Then he has nothing. What is true goodness? God. God is true goodness. So Solomon is realizing here that without God in our lives, this life under the sun, again, is meaningless. We all beam with happiness beyond reach when we have a child. And of course, that happiness wears off years later when that child grows up. Okay? But that first day when we have that child, we're holding that newborn in our arms. There's nothing greater, is there? It is just joy beyond belief. Solomon tells us that our soul can only find lasting peace and happiness with God. It would be better if we were not born than to face life as it is. Either way, your life ends the same way, in death. It doesn't matter if your life is short or if your life is long. Whether you are rich, whether you are poor, whether you're wise, whether you are foolish, it doesn't matter. It is all vanity and darkness. But Solomon has given us our first peek into the light, hasn't he? He lets us see the light at the end of the tunnel. Have you ever done that? Have you ever been into a tunnel and not see anything except for maybe a light way off in the distance? Years ago when we lived in Kashmir or Leavenworth, I took my nephew on a hike up on Stevens Pass, and we were doing what was called the Iron Goat Trail. Kathy led us off on the west side of the mountain, and we came across on the Iron Goat Trail, and you come down to what was the old Stevens Pass, the tunnel that goes through, the train tunnel that, that goes through the mountain. And it's 2 miles pretty much straight through. And we climbed in and we were hiking it, and it's cold and drafty and everything. We had headlights and flashlights, and we're looking at it, and we got into it ways, and we turned off our lights. I mean, and it's pitch black. And you hear the water dripping around and everything. And way off in the distance, there was a small little spot of light. Okay, so we turn our lights back on, and we keep hiking, and we keep hiking, and we keep hiking. But that light's never getting any bigger. And it's like, something's wrong here. Something's not right, because that light should be getting closer. Well, we get about halfway through the tunnel, and they've boarded it up. But there was a doorway, and that door was open, and that's where we were seeing that light through. And that's the reason it wasn't getting any closer, because it wasn't getting any bigger. It was just through that door. And once we went through that doorway, then we could see the true light and how big it was. And then it was like a breath of fresh air, because we knew we could get out, and we went that way. You know, but that's how it is. That's how it should be with God in our life. We have a light at the end of the tunnel. We as Christians have that light at the end of our dark tunnel. That is our life. Our hope, our goodness is to look forward to heaven. Verses 5 and 6. Though it has not seen the sun, which he's talking about that child, though it has not seen the sun or known anything, this has more rest than that man. Even if he lives 1,000 years twice, but has not seen goodness, do not all go to one place. Solomon doesn't hold anything back in his writings. The baby that never sees the light of day and knows nothing, the baby at least has rest and will see happiness and will not see unhappiness that everybody else will face. The baby will have more peace than a man who lives 2,000 years. This man will never find true happiness and meaning without God in his life. Why? Because we all go to the same place, don't we? That baby or somebody who lived for 2,000 years, we're all going to go back to dust. It doesn't matter. It is better off for that baby who doesn't have to face the world for 2,000 years. than it is to have to live those 2,000 years. All bodies will decay and go back to the dust from where they came from. But our soul, with God in our lives, we have hope. We have peace. We have the promise of eternal home. That is why we need God in our life. Along with that child that was not born, we watched a video last week from the Bible class that dealt with what happens to us after we die. And again, once we've taken that last breath, it doesn't really matter what happens. What we do with our breath, what we do with our life, how we live our life, and what we do is what matters when we take that last breath, doesn't it? Because we can't change anything past there. There are people who believe that you can pray people into heaven and you can, give money and get them out of hell or whatever. But once we die, our fate is set. And that's the reason we need to live the best life we can. That's the reason we need God in our life. So that when that death comes, then we know what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen if we've lived the life that we're supposed to have lived. Depending on how we live our life, whether you become a Christian and you did God's will, or whether you lived your life void of God, determines if you will go into the waiting place that we looked at last week of paradise, or if you'll go into the torment because of how you've lived your life. But then everybody will face the judgment day. Every knee will bow. Everybody will face Jesus in the book of life, regardless of who you are. Verse 7, all the labor of man is for his mouth, and yet the soul is not satisfied. Man or woman, we all labor for the days of our life. For what? So that we can brag about what we have, so we can show off what we have gathered, all of our belongings. See what I have. You might temporarily satisfy your human feelings until the next biggest, brightest, newest, shiniest gadget or whatchamithing comes out. And then you're not satisfied with what you have because something else is out there that's newer, that's bigger, that's brighter, that's faster. Again, that satisfaction, that joy is short-lived. But when we put our faith, when we put our all into God, then we're not going to be dissatisfied. Because that is what we should be striving for as Christians. That is what we need to be looking forward to. Not things here under the sun, but vertically towards God. Because our soul will never be satisfied when we have a life without God. Verse 8, for what more has the wise man than the fool? What does the poor man have? Who knows how to walk before the living? Again, Solomon is comparing all of mankind to each other. What does the wise man have over the fool? What does the rich man have over the poor? The living over the dead? This is all vanity. It is all chasing the wind. We all have the same ending. We all die and we all return to dust. Verse 9, better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of desire. This also is vanity and grasping for the wind. It is better to seek after what our heart truly desires than to seek after what our mind desires. It is better to seek after God and His righteousness than to seek after sensual pleasures that are vanity and still grasping for the wind. Fulfilling our wants, our desires, and our must-haves is like chasing the wind and trying to get a handful of the wind as it blows by. You can't do it. The same is true with trying to grasp true happiness and satisfaction, chasing after our desires. We need to know, we have to focus our heart and mind and soul and seeking after God and His righteousness. Jesus explains this in Mark 12, verses 28 to 31. Then one of the scribes came, and having heard them reasoning together, perceiving that he, being Jesus, had answered them well, asked Jesus, which is the first commandment of all? Jesus answered him, the first of all the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And ye shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, and with all of your strength. This is the first commandment. And the second like it is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. This is our first and foremost thought every single day. We need to love our Lord our God with all of our heart, with all of our soul, with all of our mind, and with all of our strength. That should be our focus all day, every day. Doing what we should so that we will see Jesus on that judgment day and we will hear the words, well done, my good and faithful servant. Depart to my right and enjoy the place in heaven that has been prepared for you. What we don't want to hear is if we've lived our life horizontally without God in our life, and we face that judgment day, and He says, depart from me, I do not know you. Every single day, we need to give everything in our heart, our soul, our mind, and our strength needs to be focused on Jesus. Verse 10, whatever one is, he has been named already. For it is known that he is man, and he cannot contend with him who is mightier than he. God named Adam, and then Adam named all the creatures of the world. Notice this last line. He, lowercase h, cannot contend with him, uppercase h, who is mightier than he, a lowercase h. Solomon is stating that no matter how great he is with his wealth and his knowledge, that Solomon acknowledges that there is someone who is above him, and that is God. We too need to make that same recognition. But there is somebody above us who is mightier than us, and that is God. We cannot contend with God. We wonder sometimes why God does this or does that, and we don't understand it. Why some people can get away with things, but you can't. Again, we cannot contend God. We cannot question God. God knows all. We know nothing in the big picture. And we need to understand that. And that's what Solomon is trying to get across here. Okay? Even as wealthy as Solomon was, as wise as he was, he realized that he was not at the top of the totem pole, that there was one mightier than he was. We with children kind of understand this. You know, the children sometimes think they know everything. They're smarter than their parents, you know. But yet, you know, we as parents understand what's going on. And they might be trying to sneak around behind our backs to do something, to plan something, to go somewhere. And we confront them. And they say, well, how did you know that? Well, I've got eyes behind my head. I know everything. You know, we don't really have eyes back there hiding underneath our hair, but we know it because we've been there. We try the same thing ourselves, and we catch them on it, and we call them on it. Okay? Nothing has been done on this earth, as we have studied earlier, that hasn't already been done. God knows all. God sees all. We can't hide anything. And we need to understand that. Verse 11, since there are many things that increase vanity, how is man the better? We do so many things in our life that are vain. grasping at the wind, trying to get a handful of that smoke. We try and try over and over again to gain happiness from the physical things that we can buy and collect. To what purpose? To have more happiness? It is all vanity. Does it make us happier? Maybe for a brief moment. Then we are back to where we were before. I was talking with a man Friday about his boat that he bought recently. And he thought it was a good deal. He paid, less than the man was wanting. And he got home and he started working on this boat that he thought was awesome. Come to find out that it had a problem, and he's traced that problem down and everything and found out the motor could possibly be shot. And so, he thought he knew what he was doing, and, same thing with the van that I used to have. Well, I still have it. I was using it for my work van. Thought I had made a good deal on it. And the more I dove into it, I found this problem, and parts that didn't match were used, like the dashboard. And I ended up with transmission problems, and I took it into Mercedes-Benz to look at it. And I thought it only had 250,000 miles. Being a diesel, that's about half its life. And, I said, well, okay, I can fix the transmission. We took it to Mercedes, and they said, oh, no, this dash is giving a false reading. It's got 450,000 miles, which is at the end of its life, and I'm not going to put, money into trying to fix it. And that's how we are on earth, trying to find this happiness, trying to get ahead, trying to, it's all vanity. It's all vanity. And again, when we look at Solomon in this book, it all seems to be doom and gloom, but it's not if we look up. When we stay trapped under the sun, yeah. But we've got to look up, brothers and sisters. We've got to look up. Verse 12. For who knows what is good for man in life, all the days of his vain life, which he passes like a shadow? Who could tell a man what will happen after him under the sun? Who knows what is good for man in his vain shadow of a life that is full of vanity and is so short compared to the whole lifespan? Remember, I used the example, if you take that wall as being creation and this wall as being the end of time when Jesus will come back, and we took one of those little push pins and we come out here and we put just a tiniest little hole, that's our life. That's the dash. That's our existence, is that tiny little hole in this expanse of things. It's nothing. It's minute when you compare existence in its entirety. What Solomon doesn't tell us, what he doesn't mention here, is that God knows what is really good for man. That life is dedicated to being a servant to God, living a life for God. Solomon has tried everything under the sun to find satisfaction, contentment, and happiness. And all he found was the opposite. He found discontent, loneliness, sadness, and despair. Solomon's search has yielded 3 Ds: disillusionment, discontent, and depression. Having everything he could ever want, having wives and concubines and children galore, didn't satisfy him or give him true happiness. Having prestige and money and power did not give Solomon lasting satisfaction or lasting pleasure. These worldly things only bring about more disillusionment, more discontent, and more depression. The major problem or issue here is that Solomon is dealing with everything on a horizontal plane, everything under the sun on this earth. We will never find that true happiness, that lasting happiness on earth with worldly pleasures. Everything on this horizontal plane is vanity. It isn't until we bring God into our vertical plane that we will find true and lasting happiness and the meaning to life. Again, every week I'm going to give us a spoiler alert until the last week. Again, Solomon brings a lot of gloom and doom in his chapters and his talking about life. But that's just part of it, isn't it? In the last chapter, verse 13, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. We need to fear God and keep His commandments. That is the man's all. That is what we need to do. We can't stay on this horizontal plane under the sun. We've got to break free and do the vertical plane between us and God. That's when our life finds meaning. That's when we find true happiness. That's when we get out of those 3Ds. Because then our life has something to do. And we don't keep it to ourselves, do we? No, we don't. We have to share that happiness, that enjoyment, that meaning to life with everybody else. That's what we are supposed to do. We can't find this true happiness in God and keep it. That's not what we're commanded to do. We're commanded to find this happiness and to share it with others. That gives our life meaning. That gives our life purpose. That's what we have to do. If there's any way that we can help you this morning, let us know. If you have become a Christian and you are lacking, that you're discontent and you need to be shown how to have this hope, this joy through God, let us know. Let us pray for you. Let us study with you. Let us encourage you. Or maybe you haven't put Christ on in baptism, and that's something that you realize your life is lacking, that you need this vertical connection to God. We can help you with that too. Or if you're online and you have questions, let us know. Contact us through our websites. Our information is there. Email us. Call the church building. Let us know, and we can help you with the problems that you have, with the questions that you might have. Let us help you as a family of God. Let your wishes be known this morning as together we stand and sing.